Starfield is dog shit. I haven't been this disappointed with a title in a very long time. I was expecting loads of bugs, clunky animation, watered down RPG elements, generally okay writing with a somewhat serviceable story, in exchange for beautifully crafted planets to explore, a new take on space travel, and an ever-changing sandbox universe to experiment in. I didn't buy into the hype and felt like my expectations were tempered. They had 7 years, with an improved iteration of a game engine they're intimately familiar with and decades of modders to demonstrate the potentials of their own offerings. But after 20-ish opening hours, I realized that paying the premium was a huge mistake. Allow me, dear viewer, to bitch and moan about my latest regret. I wasn't expecting much from the story. It works to get things rolling, and I deviated from it pretty early. Bethesda's best stories were always those off the beaten path, hidden away into the unexplored. I can't speak too much about the faction stuff at this time, but I expect it all to be just fine. I did go around sampling all manner of quests and really tried to find the roleplay feel that I wanted for my character, Ramsay Bolton. But the issues arise when you try and do just that. I did my best to get into the roleplay of a scummy, sadistic pirate, but I couldn't be the vile creature I wanted to, for a number of reasons. First, the dialogue responses shoehorned me into being passive-aggressive at best. It's one note, and almost none of them alter any real quest outcomes. Instead, they were merely context added to the only option that mattered, which is the second issue, limited quest approaches, at least in the early game. Maybe it opens up in later quests. But the issue isn't necessarily the number of true options, it's really the illusion of letting us roleplay for the sake of immersion. The greatest strength of Bethesda RPGs, and the third issue, and probably the most important. They've always adhered to the label of RPG in the loosest of terms, but it feels like each Bethesda title strays farther and farther away from the trueness of that. Like voiced protagonists in Fallout 4, to non-existent everything in Fallout 76. Maybe 76 gets a pass because it was a different studio, I don't know. It makes for a weird dissonance between us and our characters when we could do horrible shit, but we can't say horrible shit.
They took everyone inside hostage. If you think you can do better, sure as hell welcome to try.
Thank you so much.
Mediocre. Coming from Baldur's Gate 3, Jesus Christ. Firstly, the presentation style didn't bother me too much, but it was weird when two NPCs were talking to each other but looking directly at me. I was annoyed by the banter, the witty remarks, the morally righteous companions whining about everything I did. These are the most stilted, uninteresting group of people who don't do anything. They didn't even survey the planet they live on. And none were evil enough to ride along my questionable journey because they're all too PG.
I'm gonna be riding your tail till this is over.
I couldn't relate to or even stand some of these guys. I kept all of them as far as away from me as I could. Dog shit. Holy Christ, everything you do in this game is menus, which isn't necessarily a total sin. I like menu games, but you'd think they get the interface right. Why do I have to hold so many keys? Why are the inventory categories such shit? Why is designing ships so clunky? Why is outpost building aggressively snappy? Why when I open any menu, I have to press 3 keys to close the bitch? Absolutely inexcusable. Best it's ever been for a Bethesda title. But in the first 10 to 20 hours, it's the weakest until you perk up or find better weapons. And yet, somehow the melee combat is unresponsive. How? How is weaker melee a thing when you have Skyrim? Dog shit. It's oversimplified dog shit. It has inspired elements from Elite Dangerous, like the energy allocation, but it's rarely ever a necessity. More like, once again, illusion of choice. Space movement is simplified and doesn't actually handle like most space sims. You know what I mean. Rolling around the different axes and disabling the stabilizers for advanced maneuverings. Even strafing. Here, it's essentially airplanes in space. Anyone that's played Kerbal, Elite Dangerous, X4, Space Engineers, etc. knows that this is not how space objects behave. Maybe in Star Wars, but that's not the fantasy tone Starfield is seeking to strike. Oh shit, maybe it is. Dog shit. Load screen galore. Now, loading isn't really the main issue. The issue is there's no actual space travel. It's a backdrop. And as a space exploration game, that's almost a cardinal sin. You don't fly your ship in atmosphere. You don't fly your ship out of atmosphere. You don't fly your ship into atmosphere. You don't land, you don't dock, you don't refill, you don't refit. You don't do anything with any vehicles ever to supplement the immersion. I've explored more menus than f***ing space blocks. We have a jetpack, I guess, so that's a plus. Once upon a time, we had a horse, except now our horse has 3 f***ing loading screens. I've heard rumors that this is because of the dated engine not handling vehicles or whatever, but they didn't think to make adjustments for this upgraded iteration. The entirety of the exploration can be summed up like this. Open objectives, find on map, you're there. Randomly generated space block. What do you do now? Well, you point and press, or open a menu, of course. Randomly generated square tile. But what's there? Randomly generates POI, points of interest. Fulfill mission requirements. Now it's time for the long journey home. Wow. You wouldn't have thought it, but we just made 3 system jumps with our gravity drive and re-entry cycles. Don't worry about the encounters along the way, like bounty hunters or pirates, because if that happens... Oof, that was a close one. It's all dog shit. I tried to output 4 single outposts to 1 home base, but you can't do it. So I tried to run them into a sequence instead, where 1 picks up 2, picks up 3, picks up 4. You can, but not in a logical way. You have to make like a bridge as a workaround because of this primitive ass system. I had to have 2 links at every stop to transition the materials to the next point, because as it works now, it's only A to B to A to B. It's kind of cool to see the ship coming in and then flying away, but then you realize they're not actually traveling to other places, because you know what's up there. You've been up there. There's only a loading screen. Maybe it's not the best comparison. I haven't played No Man's Sky, it was supposedly good now, and it's been years since Elite Dangerous, which I enjoyed a lot. I also want to include smaller indie titles like Space Engineers and Empyrean. They just all do space better. Not because budgets are game engines, but because they convince you of space, despite their limitations. These systems are here in Starfield, it's just that currently there doesn't feel like a place for them. My outposts serve mainly as a prison to give these annoying bastards something to do. So whereas Starfield offers a variety of gameplay, it's all incredibly shallow to actually sink into. I don't have the same urge to explore like I did in all Bethesda titles before, and I think in large part has to do with the random gen they decided to go with, to provide the illusion of scale. Now, I don't normally have an issue with random gen. I've played and enjoyed plenty of games that do it, and previous Bethesda titles reused plenty of assets. That's fine. The issue is that everywhere seems guaranteed to have something, and sometimes it gives you too much. Duplicate stations, duplicate anomalies, duplicate this, duplicate that, oftentimes on the same planet. So the illusion begins to shatter. They've always been great at making their worlds feel real and alive. So while the random gen creates plenty for us to discover, it removes the desire to discover them. These locations don't exist for the universe, they exist to delude. To deceive you into thinking there's more here than there is. There's still handcrafted beauty here and there, but you have to trudge through the miles of stretched out landscapes to find it, because you sure as hell don't have a horse. I had no idea I'd have these thoughts going in. I'm gonna continue playing because I have to get my money's worth, $70 freaking, and see what there is to see. So maybe I'll change my mind. But as it stands, my first impressions are measured disappointment. I agree with others that think more could have been done with less. Like 20 or so well-crafted, fully explorable planets would have been better than the 1,000 soulless ones we've been given. I sat for a long time to figure out what Starfield does better than any of these other games. It sucks as an RPG, it sucks as a space game, it's weak as a Bethesda game, and it tries at every turn to break your immersion. There's perhaps one thing going for them that they've always strived to accomplish, and we'll see if they come through, which is unifying all these different elements to create that unique Bethesda experience. It's always been capable of captivating us with their inconsequential approach to be anyone, do anything type of gameplay. But for now, I think their style has become too dated. Maybe I've become too old to have seen and played so many other games with lesser funding or even lesser ambition achieve more than this overhyped, outdated, shallow, poorly written, dog shit epic.